You will now be placed into conference.
Hello, hello, hello. Is there anybody there? Are you talking to me? Okay, you guys, you're unmuted, so this is Jonathan. How are we doing? Anybody wants to say hello? Okay, then it's obvious that you guys are all listening on computer screens, so you must be listening to the webcast. And you guys are the guys who've listened to or paid attention to the countdown. Interesting enough, this is new software that we're using, instantteleSeminar.com. And the countdown was out by an hour, which is probably something to do with the difference between Greenwich Mean Time and British Summer Time. So I just finished talking for an hour. If I sound a little bit husky, I do apologise. Let's run through this for the guys who are here at the time that says on the clock, and hopefully we'll get this sorted out for next time. So how are we this evening? Thanks for taking the time and making the effort to get yourself here tonight. I'm assuming that you're curious to know more about this thing called HGE or NLP, or maybe life coaching, or maybe just to find some ways to make your life feel more certain, more secure, more hopeful. Let me introduce myself formally. My name is Jonathan Clark. I may know you, I may not, as you're on webcast, and I have no idea who I'm talking to. But let me get a quick check to see exactly how many people are here. Give me a second. Okay, so there's 2 of you on there on the phone, and the rest of you are listening to webcast, which is interesting. That's interesting statistical for me to know. Let me just mute this again. Okay, just to cut out any background noise, I've just muted the call. I will give you a chance to speak to me if you want to, if you're going to be brave enough. Let me tell you a little bit about what I do. As I said, my name is Jonathan. I'm an NLP trainer. I'm a certified life coach, certified hypnotherapist, and I'm the founder and developer of a thing called HGE, Hypnogenetic Evolution. And I want to talk to you about all of that tonight. My job is to help people change their lives, to change their habits, maybe to stop certain behaviors or start certain behaviors. Their sense of identity maybe needs to be helped. Maybe they've got money problems, maybe they've got health issues, whatever they need help with, anything they need help with. So tonight I want to share with you some concepts and some ideas that will help you with any of that kind of stuff. I also want to answer any questions that you've got and talk to you a little bit about this thing called personal development. So we're going to take a look at your life and some of the ideas and tools that we can show you to polish it up and make it sparkle a little bit. Because after all, we all do need something to look forward to, do we not? Interesting that the countdown is out by 1 hour on the clock, so I apologise if you're listening to this at 9 p.m. Some guys showed up at 8 p.m. as well, so we've confused you, which is interesting. One of the basic principles I teach is that the meaning of your communication is the response you get. So clearly we need to program the software to do a better job next time. So thank you for your patience of being here on time. This is Get Everything You Want and Meet the Trainer, which is me. Hi. I'd like to expose you to a complete mind and body technology that lets you achieve anything you want and change anything that you don't want. And I'm really serious about that. I firmly believe, and this isn't just marketing hype, I firmly believe you can have anything in life that you want as long as you're willing to go after it and as long as you use your brain and your body intelligently to go after things. Now, this is an invitation-only teleseminar. You probably heard about this through either referral or through email. And before we get started, some information about some things. We've got about 50 people on the call, which is interesting. Like roughly the same amount earlier on tonight, or listening on the PSPs. So to avoid any disruptions or all the background noise that might occur, I've muted everybody out. I'll unmute you all later on. You want to make sure you've got a pen and paper handy, because you may want to take down some notes. You might want to get some insights on this call you want to capture, or maybe some actions that you want to take. You will need a pen and paper, so please grab that just now. We're going to be talking for just under an hour. Be sure you're on the call for the entire time, because at the end of this call, I want to offer you a very special discount for taking part on my future seminars. Just because you're here tonight, I'd like to reward you for that. If you're not going to be able to stay for the entire call and you want more information about my courses, you can phone 0800 072 5792, or you can visit the website jonathanclark.org. If you're on the web right now, there's a big button that says for course details. If you click that big button, it will take you through to jonathanclark.org, and anything that you might want to look at is on that page. Now, everyone on the call, I have to assume, has one thing in common, which is that you're all interested in personal development. You're all interested in developing yourself, probably ultimately, for what purpose? Ultimately, to be happier, to maybe have more fun, to be all that you can be, and maximize your potential. That's usually the kind of things people say to me. Now, during the next 60 minutes or so, I want to show you how to do exactly that fairly easily, fairly quickly, and completely naturally. You're not going to be sitting under a metal pyramid. You're not going to wear lucky crystals in your bra, even if you don't wear one. I'm going to show you a way that uses the 4 bodies that you already have. As I said, the 4 bodies that you already have. You're never alone again when you realize at least 4 of you in there. Now, get a pen and paper, because I want to start by showing you the big picture. I'm going to need to draw some pretty little diagrams, and we're going to talk about some very, very important concepts that I think you need to be really clear on. Now, people get into this thing called personal development. A man called Jim Rohn, who's a very famous personal development speaker from the 60s and 70s. He's the guy who trained Tony Robbins, and you've probably heard of him. Jim Rohn said that people get into personal growth for one of 2 reasons, either desperation or inspiration. Now, personally, I haven't met that many people who go into it through inspiration. Most of the people I know in personal development fell into it as a safety net or a life jacket because circumstances were tough and they needed something to help them get through it. That's certainly how I got into it. So let me give you some ideas of some of those circumstances. For instance, you might be stressed out of your box. You might have way too much to do and you're suffering from overwhelm, or you're freaking out because there's so many deadlines. There's maybe, too many to do one day, or too little days to do all you need to do. For me, my thing was always fear. I got very, very good at freaking myself out. I got very, very good at being scared of people I even knew. And I was terrified of being allowed in school. I would hate things like show and tell. If the spotlight was on me, I absolutely hated it. By now, you can probably tell that that's changed a little bit. You've maybe lost your direction. It's interesting that I've run a hypnotherapy practice now for roughly 16 years, and in that period you would think it would be smoking. You think the most common issues would be smoking, or weight loss, or confidence building. And actually the most common issue was loss of direction. The most common issue was, I've left planet Earth, but I have no idea where I'm going now. Things that used to excite me don't excite me anymore, and I've kind of lost the plot. What's it all about, Alfie? That was a common complaint. Interesting enough, it's relatively quickly fixed. You can fix that problem in a couple of hours. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. Maybe you've got too much internal chatter. Maybe there's a voice in your head that won't shut up, or several voices in your head that won't shut up. And it's like sleeping with a radio next to your head. I don't know if that applies to you. Your head is cluttered. Maybe your house is cluttered. Maybe your life is cluttered. And generally, when your life is cluttered, your house is cluttered, and vice versa. That's the whole basis of the feng shui process. As within, so without. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. By the way, clutter can sometimes involve people. Do you remember the old vampire movies? Remember the Hammer House of Horror vampire movies? Peter Cushing running about with a wooden stake. One of the things they always used to say about vampires, a vampire can't come into your house unless you, do you remember? Unless you invite it in. Clutter can sometimes include people. And clutter comes from the Latin root clot, to coagulate. So maybe your life's coagulated right now, and you need to loosen it up. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Maybe it's relationship issues. I was working with a client tonight. It's relationship issues. It's interesting. She's single and she's looking. Equally, I have clients who are married and are looking. I have clients who've stopped looking. I've got clients who can't stop looking. Clients who are looking and they're still looking. Relationships, an interesting area. Maybe they're in one and they want out of it. Again, there's reasons for that. Again, we're going to touch on that area. Another major circumstance that gets people is money. I don't know if you've noticed this yet. So far, most of life's major stressors are all man-made. You don't see jackals food combining. You very rarely see vultures looking at baked potatoes. Human beings are the only people that seem to do this stuff to themselves. Money, relationships, and jobs are generally the 3 worst stressors on the planet. And do you know what? They're all man-made. And they're all recently man-made as well. Money worries. My dad was a bank manager, believe it or not. And when he died, there was no money. There was no savings. There was no insurance. The house wasn't even my mother's. Interesting for a bank manager. And I, in my need to try and bail the family out and to sort the situation, because I always like to sort situations and help people, my thought was to become a financial advisor, because I figured they knew a lot about money. Interestingly, I found out more about money by listening to guys like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Anthony Robbins, Wealth Mastery, Financial Mastery. I learned way more about money than from what they taught me than from doing a traditional financial services job for 7 years and having financial planning certificate qualifications. Very, very interesting. Money is one of my favorite subjects because money is a direct representation of who you are and your energy. There's 3 things you can do with your energy. Let's get a little bit esoteric here for you. Think about this. There's 3 things that you can do with energy. You can either save it, you can manage it, you can balance it out, or you can spend it. And it's the same with money. You can save it, you can balance it, or you can spend it. And typically, what you're doing with your energy is the same as what you're doing with your money. Think about that. Maybe you've got health concerns. Maybe you've got issues about your health or some sort of condition or some sort of disease. I certainly had asthma when I was a kid. I had a duodenal ulcer by the time I was 16. I burned a hole in my own stomach with my brain. Not a particularly useful skill, I have to admit, but one of the major reasons why I got into this field. I've had viral pneumonia twice, and I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. Health is one of my major motivations, and again, it's an area we're going to touch on tonight. The bottom line is you can affect your health using your mind. Maybe you're lacking motivation. Maybe you've lost, the plot. Maybe you're kind of no longer inspired by what used to excite you and inspire you. I was talking to a lady by email tonight who's done exactly that. She disappeared off my radar for a few days, and when I emailed her, she's kind of got into a depressed state and she'd lost track of what she's doing and stuff. Well, do you know what? There's ways to change that as well. Maybe you're doing a job you hate. Maybe you're working for people you don't respect. Maybe you're not happy in your own body. Maybe you're not the shape you'd like or the weight you'd like. Maybe you don't look the way you like. Maybe you're not the species you'd like to be. Maybe you have friends who drain you, or maybe you wish you had some. There's many, many, many circumstances that we create in our lives to teach ourselves certain lessons. And while that maybe sounds like a Hallmark card and sounds a little bit kind of cheesy and schmaltzy, the fact is, regardless of your circumstances, you can change how you feel. And once you've changed how you feel, you can change your circumstances. There isn't anything in your world that you can alter or accept or become happy about. I promise you. And there's certain concepts and certain tools that we're going to talk about tonight that you can apply in any area of your life, whether it's business, sports psychology, parenting, personal development, education, therapy, relationships, sales, money. All the things we're going to talk about tonight apply in every context. Why? Because ultimately you're the same person at work as you are in the bath, hopefully with more clothes on at work. You're the same person. This kind of thing about spiritual life and emotional life and physical life and work life and career life are two different things from personal life. No, they're not. No, they're not. You're the same person no matter where you go. You take your luggage with you. So to go into that, we're going to talk about this technology called NLP and HGE. I want to explain the difference a little bit. We're going to explore how we as human beings actually tick. So you're going to discover a little bit about why you do what you do, and if you're not happy with what you're doing, how you can change it. We're going to talk a little bit about why you'd want to learn HGE and how it's relevant to your life. And then we're going to talk a little bit about an upcoming course that I've got in Scotland, which I'd like to invite you to. This is a tele-seminar, so of course there's going to be a 2-second sales pitch. We'll leave that to the end, though. We're going to talk about the big picture of personal development and self-help, because that's ultimately probably what we're all interested in this call. But to introduce tonight, what I'd like to do is tell you a little story, a little tale. I'd like to talk to you about a man who's at the end of his working career, who's a lot wiser and older than I am. And he's a carpenter. He's been an apprentice carpenter. He's a time-served carpenter, and very, very soon he's going to be a retired carpenter. And he was getting ready to retire, and he told his old friend, and his old friend was a long-time employer of his, a contractor, who would hire him and give him jobs to do. And he said to his contractor friend that he's going to leave, he's going to retire, he's going to spend more time with his family and put his feet up and watch TV. And his boss said to him, well, how are you going to do financially? Once you give up the paychecks and I stop paying you and you retire, what are you going to do? How are you going to manage financially? Because you're not going to have that much saved. I'd imagine you've got that much saved. And the carpenter admitted, no, you're right, I really don't have much savings in the bank. I'm going to get a state pension, but it's not particularly great. But I'll survive. There'll be some handouts, and I can buy stuff cheap, and I can go to the cheap shops, and I can do all that kind of stuff and cut back. I'll tighten my belt a little bit, but hey, I'll manage. Then the contractor friend felt a little bit sorry for him and thought, well, this guy's a really good worker. This guy's worked all his life. He's worked hard. He deserves something better. So he decides to do him a great personal favor. And what he says to the carpenter is, do me a favour, I'd like you to build me one more house. Build me one more house, but I want you to make it your best work, and I want you to start from the ground up. We've got the foundations already in place. I'd like to build the framework and the architecture and do everything. The spears, the buttresses, everything. I want you to do the whole thing from the ground up. It's basically going to be a wooden house. Now, the carpenter was reluctant. He was thinking, oh, God, I'm going to have to spend all this time, But as the work progressed, his heart became less and less, committed. His heart wasn't in his work anymore. Now, I don't know if you've ever done this, but he resorted to shortcuts. There was some shoddy workmanship, and sometimes he used inferior materials, and he was weary, and his only thought was to finish the job as quickly as possible, which is kind of an unfortunate way to finish his career. He'd bunk off early, he'd change the figures on his timesheets, he'd go home, he'd make his dinner, put his feet up, and he'd watch his favourite TV programme. Now, his favourite TV programme was a programme called Quantum Leap. I don't know if you've ever seen Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap is one of those shows that's been on for years and years and years, and it's always been kind of there. I personally haven't really watched it that much, but I get the gist of it. I know roughly what it's about. You've got this guy, who, if you haven't seen it before, every week he finds himself transported into a different time period. He finds himself in a whole new set of circumstances every single week. And not only that, he'd find himself in a new body every single week. Imagine that. Imagine waking up tomorrow inside a new body. Imagine waking up tomorrow even being a different gender, because that sometimes happened to him. He look in the mirror, he can see what everybody else sees, which is a new face that he's wearing. We as the viewer see him in his old way, but everybody else sees the new person that he is. He hears his own voice in his head, but magically his voice gets changed, and everyone else hears a different voice in their head. Now, you can get this whole series on DVD now. You can get the whole box set, and if you know DVD, it makes the picture sharper, the sounds are clearer, it's Dolby stereo. If you've got even newer technology, it becomes even sharper and brighter. The other interesting thing about Quantum Leap was he had an invisible advisor. I don't know if you remember this. Every episode, he'd be able to consult this invisible guide who knew a lot about the past, knew a lot about the future, and knew a lot about the present, and was able to kind of steer him in the right direction. And any time he was really, really stuck, he would ask the guide for help. Now, interesting enough, the guide wasn't always available. Sometimes the guide was off doing something else. But from time to time, he could bail him out. Because every episode he'd have to do something big. He'd have different responsibilities, big moral dilemmas. He'd find himself in a new moral dilemma every single week. Now, I don't know if you can relate to that feeling. A new crisis every week. And how do you get out of a crisis when you don't know which way to turn? You ask your invisible guide, if you've got one. But certainly what you do is you hopefully ask someone who knows a little bit about what you're dealing with. It's like buying a new car or a used car. Imagine you were going to buy a used car. It's really helpful to get someone in who knows a bit about cars, especially if you don't. And they can give it a once-over. They can point out any tricks of the trade that have been done. There's maybe possible repairs that have been done that are hidden and you can't see them clearly. Maybe how much is a fair amount of money to spend on the thing, how much to invest in it, whether it's worth it or not. And they can point you in the right direction. I'm sure you get the idea. Now, systematic development of a person's positive characteristics through self-hypnosis. Let me say that again. The systematic development of a person's positive characteristics through self-hypnosis. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the real hardcore tools and how-to of personal growth. You've maybe seen the current buzz movie called The Secret, which talks about attraction and thoughts being things. Not a new concept at all, a concept that's been around for decades, but very well packaged and very well marketed, it has to be said. You call something The Secret, people immediately want to know what it is. There was another film a couple of years ago called What the Bleep Do We Really Know? If you haven't seen What the Bleep, then go to Amazon and grab a copy. It's a fantastic movie. Both of these films talk about creating your universe and running your mind and running your brain in such a way as to make things happen the way you want them to. Now, what's interesting is, that's a great theory. By the time you finish the DVD or read the book, you really don't have much practical ways of doing that. Now, that's something that I specialize in. I specialize in how-tos. My job is to help people gradually improve their mind and their body, understand the causes of problems, and learn to affect their own neurology, their own health, their own energy, and their own mindset using their own resources. That's what this stuff's about. Now, NLP, Neuro-linguistic programming, which you've probably heard of, has been around since the early 70s. NLP was a great gift to the personal development world because it started to give people how-tos. It took the theories and gave you specific game plans, step-by-step how-to. You want to make a phobia disappear in 10 minutes? Here's how to do it. You want to fix spelling dyslexia? Here's how to do it. You want to have someone's energy increase? Here's how to do it. If you do the things and follow the steps, you get the result. There are recipes. Why do people buy recipe books? Because if you follow the steps in the right order and sequence, you get the result you want. It's that simple. That's what NLP did. Now, interesting in the NLP world, there is no agreed definition of what NLP means. I think that's quite indicative of the situation of the NLP world right now. No one can agree on what NLP actually stands for. Let me give you a definition. You might want to write it down. I would say NLP stands for people program their neurology through the language they use. I'll say that again. People program their neurology through the language they use. You are continually giving yourself post-hypnotic suggestions which affect you physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Now, some of the suggestions you're giving yourself are dumb suggestions. Some of the questions you ask yourself are dumb questions. Think about it. You ask yourself questions all day. Do you? Yes, you do. Is that true? Yes, it is. The conscious mind uses questions all day long. Does it? Yes. That's how it works. But some of the questions are, why did that happen again? Why can't I do? Why am I so unlucky? When will someone ever notice me? Dumb questions, dumb questions. You have to reprogram the computer. Now, NLP as a discipline, fantastic discipline. I'm an NLP trainer. I have been for years. It's been very, very good to me. But there are certain holes in the NLP model. There are certain things that I wasn't happy about. Certain questions I would be asked by people and I didn't have a satisfactory answer. NLP was often mentioned as being cold. It was described as being clinical, heartless, not very holistic. And I'd probably agree with that. It was designed by a computer specialist and a linguistics professor. So it does tend to be kind of cold and clinical. It's full of technical jargon that puts people off. It completely omits the spiritual experience. In fact, it was deliberately designed that way to not be attached to any of the New Age movement in the 70s. As a technology itself, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, NLP hasn't really evolved that much since it first appeared. It largely ignores the mind's effect on health and healing in the physical body. It's often criticized as being a quick fix that doesn't last. What it certainly is full of politics and full of cliques and full of organizations arguing about who's really the right person to learn from. And even once trained in NLP, a lot of people wouldn't apply NLP. Now, I never quite understood how to make a big change in that, but now I have. And over the years, I've been developing my own approach called HGE. HGE stands for Hypnogenetic Evolution. Now, what does that mean? It means you can evolve and develop yourself by using self-hypnosis. You can systematically develop your positive characteristics using self-hypnosis. Be that really simple? Close your eyes, go inside, and you come out better. That's what HGE is about. So let me tell you a little bit about this. Here's what I'd like you to do. Grab a sheet of paper, and I'd like you to do a little diagram for me. I'd like you to draw on the top left-hand corner of your page, I'd like you to draw a little circle. And then immediately underneath that, draw another circle. So you're going to develop a column of circles. Then below that, draw a third circle. So you have 1, 2, 3 circles in a column, vertically. So after 3 circles, I want you to draw a rectangle underneath the circle. So you have circle, 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 rectangle. And I want you to label these S-M-E-P from top to bottom. Top circle is S, second circle is M, third circle is E, bottom rectangle is P. Now, what on earth has he got me drawing on this sheet of paper? Let me explain the big picture here. You have more than one body. Did you know that? Can you fit them all in that chair? You have more than one body. You have a physical body, obviously. It's the one you're sitting in right now. It's the vehicle which houses your awareness. It's the foundation upon which everything else sits. Remember, your body is a temple, but it's also a nightclub. Now, your physical body is the vehicle in which you are a guest. Now, above that, you have the E circle. E stands for the emotional body. The emotional aspect, or body, is the seat of all your unconscious processes. It's the source of all your memories and your emotions. Now, interestingly, the emotional body is magnetic. It attracts people with similar emotions. So think about anger management groups, or think about protest movements. You attract people who have the same emotions as you do. That's an interesting concept. Now, above that, you have M for mental body. The mental body is the rational, thinking, conscious mind. It loves debate, stimulation, discussion, and it usually has an area of interest or a field of knowledge that it's very, very good at. Now, last but by no means least, in the top of the pile, interesting enough, at the top of the pile, over and above everything else, is the superconscious mind, or the spiritual body. Your connection with whatever is higher and bigger than you. Now, at the core of HGE, and here's where it differs, the core of HGE says the assumption and the reality of all personal growth, all self-help, the way to evolve yourself and reach a balanced, flowing life where you're fully actualized, as Maslow called it, you're happy, you're healthy, you're fulfilled. The big picture answer is to pay attention to all four bodies. If you don't pay attention to one of the four bodies, you'll pay with pain. If you neglect one of the bodies, it will come back and bite you later. The big secret, the big picture secret, this is the real secret, is you need to take care and nurture all four bodies. If you do that, you'll grow and evolve and develop your full potential. Now, NLP as a discipline only deals with the mental body. It's very much a mental discipline. That's why it's accused of being cold. Now, if NLP techniques are combined with hypnosis techniques, you're now accessing the emotional body and the unconscious mind. But you're still missing half the picture. Now, most people tend to develop and focus on one of these four bodies at a time. So you get physical people who are into materialism and bodybuilding and athletics and bling and are driven by basic drives, food, shelter, reproduction. Some people are emotional, so they're either in meltdown all the time or they're feeling a range of emotions, really bubbly, really sparkly. Some people are very mental, very academic, very systematic. They like lists. Excuse me, I'm getting a little bit hoarse tonight. Other people are very, very spiritual. So they meditate all day, and they can see auras, and they're in touch with their higher selves. Now, the idea is to develop them all. Have a healthy physical body to live in, nice surroundings, money to do with what you want, understand, feel, and be in control of your emotions, have a developed intellect and focus, and be connected to some sort of spiritual power that's bigger than you. Now, that's the ultimate balance. What's interesting is, as you grow and get older and grow up, each of the body evolves at the time. So, for instance, your physical and emotional bodies both mature between 18 and 22. Between 18 and 22, your physical and emotional bodies reach their pinnacle. What's interesting is between 18 and 22, most people, if they have any stuff, any issues, any baggage lurking about in there, stuff's a technical term, if they have any issues in there, the stuff tends to show up. The stuff tends to get highlighted and people start having weird stuff occur in their world. Think about it. Think about your own past. What was going on between 18 and 22? Between 28 and 32 is when the mental body starts to mature. By that point, most people have learned a particular discipline or area of knowledge or expertise, that if there's any blockages in there, somewhere between 28 and 32, issues come up. Maybe career shifts, maybe issues of identity, mental stuff shows up. Between 38 and 42, what people call the midlife crisis, is where the spiritual body matures. And if there's any issues still in there, typically what happens is men suffer from heart issues or blood pressure issues. Women typically suffer from thyroid issues or expression issues. Now, these are generalizations, these are just big patterns, but they do tend to be accurate. They do tend to be very, very accurate. Now, the key is to develop them all. Now, there's a writer, an author, that you might want to look into called Dion Fortune. Dion Fortune was a writer about magic in the 20s and 30s, and I don't mean rabbits out of hats. Dion Fortune wrote about esoteric magic, and one of the things she said was, and this is very profound, this is something else you might want to write down, she said that the descent into physical must be completed before the ascent into spiritual. I'll repeat that. The descent into physical must be completed before the ascent into spiritual. In other words, you cannot become spiritually evolved, you cannot become an ascending master, you cannot rise your consciousness to that level unless you have already taken care of the mental, emotional, and physical worlds. You can't hopscotch. You can't jump. A lot of people learn about Taoism or Hinduism, or they get into an esoteric practice, be it astrology or Huna or Wicca, and what they think is they can just jump right across and start to evolve and grow towards spirituality. Unfortunately, they're living in horrible houses, they've got no money, and they're currently going through divorces because they haven't taken care of the mental, emotional, and physical issues. You have to take care of that stuff, otherwise it will show up and bite you. And that's the truth. That's absolutely the truth. You have 4 bodies, you need to take care of them. The physical body, obviously, is the vehicle that you're a guest. But here's my question for you. How well are you looking after your physical body? It needs regular servicing. It needs regular MOTing. You need to give it lubricants. You need to give it water and the fuel that suits it best. You can't put diesel in a car that runs non-leaded. Well, not if you want to run it smoothly. The question is, how are you treating your physical body? Because when you're unwell or you're tired, you can't concentrate, you can't get things done, you can't even do the simplest of tasks and live life normally. To live life fully, you need a level of health and vitality. Now, the statistics about mortality and morbidity, I'm sure you know, are shocking. However, the longer you live, the more you can achieve. So, when you understand how your body works and how the mind affects the body, and you give it the respect and the care that both deserve, it will take care of you. Your mind and your body will take care of you as long as you take care of them. Now, everything we do requires energy, and energy comes from being healthy. Therefore, everything you do requires you to be healthy. Does that make sense? This is not rocket science. Think about this for a minute or two. How long can you live without food? How long can you live without food? Depends if you're David Blaine in a box. How long can you live without food? It's usually weeks. It's usually weeks. How long can you live without water? Usually days. How long can you live without oxygen? Minutes. How long can you live without energy? The answer is you can't. Your body needs 4 things to thrive. It needs energy first, oxygen second, water, which is H2O, third, and then food last. Interesting. We show you ways of raising your energy. Maybe you've got too much energy. Maybe your energy is out of whack. We can show you how to sort that out as well. We start our lessons with the physical body. HGE begins with physical training because it's the foundation upon which everything else rests. Now, above that is the next body. But before we move on to that, let me hit you with a question. I want you to think about this. I want to ask you several questions tonight, and here's one of them. If your doctor told you that it was critical for you to change your lifestyle for the sake of your physical body, as of the end of this call, what do you know you need to stop doing or start doing? I'll leave that with you. Now, above the physical body is your emotional body. The emotional body is the seat of all your feelings, your hopes, your dreads. Now, it's interesting that the body is coated, all the cells in the body are coated with things called neurotransmitters, which means every cell in your body knows what you're thinking about. If you're happy, your eyelashes are happy. If you're sad, your teeth are sad. And all of your memories are stored throughout your body. They're not just in the brain. If you've ever had any deep tissue massage, I'm sure you've had someone press a particular part of your body, and all of a sudden you're howling the place down, remembering a memory from the past. Or you suddenly start giggling inanely for no apparent reason. Chances are they've actually triggered a memory that's stored somewhere in your body. Now, the thing I was good at storing in my body was fear. At school, I couldn't read out loud in class. I'd get really scared. I'd break out in a sweat. I'd get stuttery. I couldn't breathe. I used to jump English classes and stay away from them in case I'd have to read out loud. Especially plays. Do you remember Shakespeare plays? Or everybody in the class had a line to read out or a part to play. And you could see your line coming up as you go down the page. And the closer you got, the more nervous you get. Well, I was so good at doing that by the time I was 16 years old, I had a duodenal ulcer. I burned a hole in my stomach using my brain. Not a particularly useful skill and not one I'd recommend you model. However, I thought if you can burn a hole in your head, burn a hole in your stomach with your head, what else can you do that's more useful? Think about this for a minute. Think about emotions. How often do you feel bad in the average week? How often do you feel bad? I mean, this is only, Tuesday? In the UK, it's Tuesday. So think about this. In the last 7 days, have you been angry at all? Have you been sad in the last week? How many times did you get scared in the last 7 days? Have you felt guilty at all in the last week? And are you anxious about anything next week? Because here's something I'd like to think about as we get into the mechanics of how things can be changed. Think about emotions. All emotions have a time element. You might want to write that down. All emotions have a time element. Think about this. Think about this. Anything for you to be angry about has to be something that's happened in the past. Something happens, then you get angry about it. Does that make sense? Sadness is the same. Something bad happens, you then feel sad. You can't be sad in advance. The sad thing has to happen, and then you get the sadness, or the guilt, or the fear, or the anger. Fear is about something that you've met before, and you know to be scared of it. That's why you're scared. Now, at this point, somebody says, well, I can imagine they're going to build a motorway through my house right now. That would make me fairly angry, and it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, but in your head, to generate the anger feelings, you have to first of all run the movie of it's already happened. Then you get the anger. Here's something else I want you to write down. Emotions are my physical reaction to my thoughts. Emotions are my physical reactions to my thoughts. You're freaking yourself out. No one's doing it to you. No one angers you. No one pisses you off, if you pardon the language. Nobody makes you sad. No one can do that to you. I can't make you sad. I can't make you angry. I can do things that you then choose to get angry about, but I can't make you do anything. No one can make you do anything. Years ago, I heard someone say that. No one can make you feel bad without your permission. And if you think about it, it's absolutely true. How you feel is your physical reaction to what you're thinking. And guess what? It's you that's doing the thinking. That's really important. That's really important. Now, the only exception to the past rule is anxiety. Anxiety is about the future. Anxiety is about something that hasn't happened yet. Anxiety comes from you being worried about what might happen. It's the only one that's not about the past. Think about it. You can't be anxious about something that's happened. Now, why is this important? Well, here's why it's important. If you change the time perspective on an emotion, the emotion disappears. In other words, if you think about something scary, but you put yourself in the position of being after it, and it's already been completed successfully, the anxiety disappears. If you think it's something that you are sad about, but you put yourself before the event took place, so it hasn't happened yet, because it hasn't happened yet, you can't be sad about it. Does that make sense? Now, here's the deal. You don't do that consciously. Consciously, it won't change you. You can't say, tell you what, go back into the past before it happened. That doesn't work. But if you do it unconsciously, and this is the hypno part, if you do it in trance, if you do it in self-hypnosis, you can literally change your point of view. You can literally change your perspective, see it in a new light. And when you do that at the unconscious level, the emotion disappears. Now, this can happen in seconds. It can happen in minutes. You literally can let go of all the anger from your past in about 15 minutes. And as you get quicker at it, it gets easier. And we can show you how to do that. Now, you can use many ways of doing that. You can use timeline therapy, which is the main form of therapy I use. You can use a thing called higher self therapy. You can use the emotional freedom technique, or the tapping technique that you've probably seen made famous by Paul McKenna. You can use the phobia cure from NLP. You can use collapsing anchors. You can use the complete acceptance process. You can use all sorts of different interventions. There practically isn't something that you can't fix. I don't care how long somebody's been abused, or been upset, or been deprived, or been in some sort of horrible situation, they can change how they feel about it in minutes, not years. If you don't believe that, then do some research, because that technology has been around for at least 20, 30 years. And we can teach you how to do it for yourself first, and then for other people. Now, moving on, think about this, the emotional body. Imagine if everything you said about any other human being, imagine if they could overheat it. How would you change what you talk about? Think about that. Now, above the emotional body, you have the mental body, the third of the bodies, the rational, thinking, conscious mind. Now, the conscious mind usually has some sort of area of interest or a field of knowledge that it specializes in. The mental body loves stimulation. It loves deep, meaningful discussion. It loves debate. It loves words, concepts, philosophy, language. Now, we're not going to talk about the mental body this evening. Do you know why? because we already are. This is a tele-seminar. This is a web simulcast. We're sharing information. We're sharing ideas, concepts, and you're doing it with your conscious mind. You're listening to this and you're learning. Does that make sense? So we don't need to talk about the conscious mind because you're using it all day long. But let me ask you a little bit of thing, one last question before we move on. Let's assume that from now on, after this call, that the shelf life, the worthiness of all your academic knowledge that you've got in your head right now was only going to last for another 2 years. Imagine that in 2 years' time, everything that's currently in your knowledge base would be obsolete, which in many fields isn't actually much of a stretch. What would you start studying now to replace everything that's going to be obsolete? Think about it. Now, finally, but perhaps most importantly, many people believe there's a fourth aspect, the higher conscious mind, or the spiritual body, which is much higher order thinking. It's into wisdom, justice, order, ecology, peace, truth, perfection, evolution. This is certainly the spiritual part of you. It's the part of you that connects you to whatever you think is bigger than you, be it God, the creator, the quantum field, the infinite void, omnipresence, omniscience, whatever you want to call it. Interestingly, completely omitted by the NLP model. Now, the spiritual body loves things like images, ceremony, rituals, chants, songs, and mantras. And you know what? In the early 70s, when NLP was being devised, they deliberately chose to not have it be spiritual. They deliberately decided they didn't want it to be linked to the New Age movement, so they deliberately kept it non-spiritual. It's very, very interesting. Yet, isn't it interesting that every single NLP master trainer on the planet practices some form of spirituality or esoteric study? Interestingly, they all keep it separate. They do their NLP thing, and then they have a separate thing on the side. So Tony Robbins, for instance, calls himself a force for God. John Grinder, one of the original co-founders of NLP, uses animal forms when he's training. Richard Bandler spent years in Hawaii studying Huna and shamanic healing. Yet, they keep it separate from the NLP model. It's almost like there's NLP in one corner, and on the other end of the scale, there's this thing called esoterics. I personally don't think it's a polar opposite. I don't think it's a dichotomy. I think it's a range. So can I train you in selling techniques? Yes, I can. Can I teach you how to cure phobias? Yes, I can. Can I teach you much more spiritual, esoteric concepts? Yes, I absolutely can. We can actually teach you some pretty heavy stuff that I'm not going to mention in this call because it might freak some people out. But we can take you as far as you want to go. If you just want to apply these tools and techniques to your business, we can do that. If you want to apply it way beyond that, we can also do that as well. If you want more information on that, then please get in touch with me or have a look at the website, especially around about December of this year. Now, the whole spiritual aspect is a very interesting subject. Some people avoid it like the plague. Some people think it's the everything, it's the be-all and everything. What I discovered was that people tend to get into spirituality through one of four reasons. They either get into it because they go through some kind of crisis, and this has maybe happened to you, where they have to look beyond their usual coping mechanisms. Nothing that they can bank on. So they fall back on spirituality as the last hope. They find themselves praying because it's the only thing left to do. Second way it can come into people's lives is they are touched by something emotionally. They see something, or that you read something, or you hear something that's spiritual, and it affects you emotionally. That's maybe happened to you. Or maybe you've been suggested by somebody to look into it. Maybe somebody gave you some advice and said you should really read Conversations with God, or you should maybe go and listen to these tapes, or you should maybe go and listen to this speaker. And that's what touched you. But certainly at some point in your life, if you haven't had one, you're going to, but you probably have had several spiritual experiences. An experience where your energy goes through the roof. There are no words to describe it. In fact, you can't really talk to anyone else about it unless they've had something similar, but it felt great. And it changed your identity, it changed your sense of reality, and it left you different. When that happens, and it happens to everybody, usually by the late 30s, but it's going to happen eventually, it opens up the entire field. It changes the entire outlook in life. And it's ultimately very, very important. Very, very important. Ecology is the modern-day buzzword. If it isn't terrorism, and it isn't terrible things being done to small children, the other thing that the news is full of is ecology and global warming. Ecology is important. What you're doing for yourself needs to be good, but also needs to be good for your family, your community, and ultimately the planet. We're all growing and evolving, both individually and as a race, Unfortunately, we're evolving at different speeds. And when you die, what are you going to take with you? You can't take your possessions. You can't even take your loved ones. You can't even take your children. Yet many people believe you can take your consciousness. So one of the things we teach in HGE are some very ancient and very metaphysical ways that we've looked into, and I've certainly had my horizons expanded as a result, and we hope that you have the same insights. You can learn self-development techniques to enhance and maintain your healing skills, even your psychic abilities. All the psychic abilities are trainable and learnable. There's a reality beyond what you think is real, and once you know its rules, you can change it. And we can give you that if you're interested in knowing it. Now, one of the interesting things I find about the whole issue of personal development is that the four bodies all need to be taken care of. All need to be taken care of. So think about which ones you need to pay attention to right now. Chances are any crises or any problems that you're suffering from in your world right now, they're all coming on the same level. So you may have a whole bunch of physical issues. You may have money issues, a problem with your house, your car doesn't run, and you've got something wrong with your body. Well, those are all physical things. Maybe that's your unconscious mind trying to draw your attention to it. Or maybe you're dealing with emotional issues. Maybe you're dealing with fear, phobias. Maybe you can't go out of the house and you're terrified of telling anybody. Maybe you're listening to this on a computer right now because you were terrified at the thought of being on the phone and actually talking to that guy. Maybe it's mental things that are going on in more ways than one. Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe you're having problem managing your time. Or maybe you're trying to study and you're not learning stuff because you're stressed out your box. Or maybe you're suffering from spiritual issues. A lot of people suffer from spiritual issues and they believe that they're being attacked or they're being pinpointed by somebody or something, or they've been afflicted by some kind of bad luck thing going on. There's a pattern of weird stuff happening around them. Chances are all the problems in your life can be grouped into one of these four levels. And that's simply telling you that's the area of your life that you need to look at. Now, here's the deal. The NLP model only deals with the mental and the emotional. There's very few NLP people who go anywhere near the physical body, and that's a shame because that's the vehicle upon which everything else resides. And they certainly don't go near the spiritual body, not within the NLP model. I, as I said before, feel that it's important you develop all four, which is why I developed HGE. That's why I wrote my book, Ignite and Unshackle, which is all about HGE. And that's what I now teach in my courses. When you do any of my courses, I'll train you and certify you in NLP. Absolutely. However, I'll also train you in certifying HGE. Now, HGE was only launched in 2005 in June, so still very, very new, and there's still very, very, very few people practicing it. If you're interested in coming along and taking part in some of my trainings, you'll be one of the founding fathers. You'll be one of the few people who actually do this stuff. Now, what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about what's coming up. One of the reasons for me being on this call tonight was to give you a chance to talk to me and listen to my style and listen to my approach and see if there's a mutual beneficial connection between you and I. What I'm offering you is the chance to use real practical tools, real hands-on, rapid results in the real world. This isn't about theory. This isn't about clever one-liners. You're not going to learn a bunch of cheesy Hallmark card type one-liner sentences that to kind of put a positive spin on how painful things are. That's not what this is about. This is not about kidding yourself on that everything's better. This is about physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual change. It's about coming in and going away different. It's about letting go of the stuff, letting go of the dumb limiting beliefs in your head that you feel are real. It's about making them go away. It's about letting go of anger, sadness, fear, and guilt, and anxiety, and being a lot more happier and healthful and stable. And it's about changing your behaviors. If you want to stop smoking, we can help you. If you want to stop biting your nails, we can help you. If you want to stop beating yourself up, we can help you with that. All these things are changeable. And that's essentially what we offer you. Now, you probably know that I've got an NLP and HGE practitioner course. Now, usually we do it 7 days back to back. However, enough people this year said to me they couldn't get time off their work to do 7 days straight. So they've asked me to do it on weekends only. We're running, I think it's our 22nd NLP and HGE practitioner course. And it's open to you guys as well. I'd like to invite you, any of you who want to come along, you're more than welcome to come to Glasgow and take part. Now, the cost of the course, somebody's actually asked me what's the course costing. The full price of the course is £2,137 for the training. Now, that's usually a £500 deposit and then 10 payments by credit card in the balance, or you can pay the balance in one go if you want to. The £500 deposit guarantees you your seat. It gets you the pre-study materials, which is 31 CDs of a live recording of me taking people through this material. It's not some American trainer's tapes that I'm trying to sell you. It's me on CD. So it's a Lanarkshire accent in a Glasgow venue, and it's us talking like this. And we give you that up front. It's a 200-page full-colour manual. You study all the materials in your own time, so when you come on the training, you've got most of the theory in your head. You can then concentrate on doing all the physical stuff, because you can talk about this stuff all you like till the cows come home. It's not until you actually apply it to yourself that things change. You then make your payments, and you then pay the balance. Simple as that. After the course, you can come back and repeat it. That's one of the options you've got. You'd also have an internationally recognised NLP practitioner certificate, and a HGE practitioner certificate as well, which one day will be internationally recognised if I've got anything to do with it. Another question I've been asked here is, why should I do your training? There's lots of NLP trainings. Why should I do yours? That's a valid question. There's a 7-day money-back guarantee, so if you're not happy at any point on the training, it's not one of these get-out-quick scheme things where, by day 2, if you're not happy, you have to tell us, otherwise we're going to charge your full card, the full amount. It's not that at all. You can do the entire training, and at the end of it, if you're not happy, then we'll refund you. Interesting enough, that's never, ever happened. If you want testimonies from some of my existing clients, then there's a whole bunch of them on the website. If you want phone numbers or email addresses from people, I can put you in touch with guys who've done my training before, and you can speak to them rather than listening to the mad marketing expert. What else do we do? We have all sorts of support materials afterwards. We published what I call the Re-Entry Survival Guide, which is once you've learned all that stuff and you're going to walk back into the matrix again, how do you prevent yourself from being burned at the stake like a witch? You come back from the training all pumped up and psyched up, ready to change the world. How do you make sure that people don't think you're an alien or you've been replaced by a pod person? We have some guidelines on how to do that and how to integrate back into society. We can also show you how to set up your own practice. A lot of people do these courses because they want to be life coaches, or they want to be therapists, or they want to be trainers. That's how I made my business. We can show you exactly how to do that. And I can do that personally, or I can do that in seminar format. We can show you how to get all your money back and more. There is a good living to be made in this industry, and we can show you exactly how to do that. There's all sorts of things we can do for you. Now, ultimately, the best guide would be listening to your unconscious mind. Trust your gut and let it tell you who you should train with, because ultimately my style might not be suitable for you. I might talk too fast. You might not like my accent. So shop around and make sure you're happy with who you're looking at. Which kind of takes me back to the analogy of buying a car, even a second-hand car. You know, it's really important if you're going to buy a second-hand car that somebody else has used, that you know something about its history. It's really important that you know about the past, because the more you know about the past, the more comfortable you feel. And if the details are not in order, then you feel safer and you feel more secure knowing that you've made the right choice. You can even get a report done if the car's a long way away. That's what I did. My car was down in Kent, and I'm up in Scotland. So I sent the RAC down. I got an expert to go and inspect it. And that way I could check it out before I signed anything. And I'm delighted with my purchase. I got my dream car. But I didn't just dream about it. Ultimately, it's what you do that counts. But, you know, it's good to ask for advice. It's ask someone who knows a lot about the subject and gather information, ask the right questions, and then you can make your mind up and you can buy with confidence. And the guy in Quantum Leap, remember him? He keeps appearing in a different body and has to get used to the new him every single week. He looks different. He sounds different. And after a while, he gets used to the changes. And he has this guide. He has this invisible advisor who's like a mentor or a kind of guardian angel. And the other star on the show that no one else can see. And he can talk to them. But this other person's totally invisible to everybody else. But he can go in and have these quiet conversations with his guide anytime he wants. And it keeps him right. It keeps him on the right path. And you know what? There's always a happy ending. Quantum Leap always ended on a high. There's always a happy ending at the end of a Quantum Leap. Unlike the carpenter. Because when the carpenter had finally finished, the contractor came one last time for the final inspection of the house. And after a quick inspection, the contractor handed the front door key to the carpenter, and he said with a big smile on his face, "This is now your house. It's my gift to you, my old friend, for the many years of being my most dependable lead carpenter." Oh dear, what a shock, what a shame. If the retiring carpenter had only known that he was building his own house, he would have probably taken more care, bought better materials, and have done it with much more attention to detail. Because all of us, like the carpenter, are building our own future dwelling place, with every single thought, every single word, and every single deed. So, I hope you've enjoyed this last hour or so. I thank you for taking the time to be on the call. I hope you've enjoyed it tonight. I want to thank everyone who listened to the call, especially those who put some questions in. If you are interested in anything that I've talked about tonight, please do get in touch. You're my kind of person. If you're not, then thank you for listening to the whole call. I appreciate you being here. I'm sure our timelines will cross again, and if I can help you with anything at all, please do get in touch. Have a nice evening for the rest of the night, and I shall hopefully see you in the future. Take care. Goodbye.